Don Cornelius, you know his name. He launched all kinds of music careers through Soul Train, his tremendously popular TV show that was on air for 37 years.
I'm Don Cornelius, and as always in party, we wish you love, peace, and soul.
But 6 months ago, yesterday, the man behind Love, Peace, and Soul shot and killed himself. And now his son is launching another project, not on the songs people want to hear, but about the struggle he says people don't want to talk about, and that being suicide.
Do you know the faces of suicide? I am the face of suicide, and our countless other family members. Suicide affects families, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. Suicide affects everyone, be it depression, prescription drugs, mental illness, or accidental. Suicide is on the rise in our communities.
Tony Cornelius joins me live from Los Angeles. And Tony, welcome, and I'm sorry about the loss of your father, but I appreciate that this is something that you want to talk about. Take me back 6 months ago, your father kills himself, and you are the one to find him. Tell me about that phone call. What happened in that phone call to make you go find him at his house?
Well, first of all, Brooke, thank you very much for having me on the program. And as I go back and think about that day and that night, that evening, that morning, prior to that, he had talked to me about not wanting to be here anymore. In other words, he didn't think he would be here. I didn't know what that meant. But when I got that call that morning, it was just a call of urgency, and I replied to it by getting up out of my bed immediately and going to his home. I mean, his thoughts were that, I'm sorry to call you, Tony, but I just don't think I'm going to be here anymore. And those words just resonated for me.
So I imagine that alarm bells sort of start going off for you. You go immediately to his home, and I understand you immediately smell gunpowder. Did you know, Tony, in that instant, what your father had done?
Actually, no. You know, when you smell gunpowder, I mean, it's almost like a match, but it's even more pronounced. You kind of don't know what it is. I thought maybe it could have been maybe a small fire somewhere. But then, you know, walking into other parts of the house and finding him, that's when I noticed that there was something a little different going on.
So you find your father, and, you know, I've talked to people who have loved ones who've committed suicide, and the first thing they say is it's such a selfish act. Is it something that, I'm sure it saddened you, but did it anger you as well?
Well, of course, it angers me now periodically, but it's really about celebrating at this point. I go through my periods of being upset and disappointed about it, but of course I'm very angry. I mean, he should be here. He should be here enjoying his family, his granddaughter, his sons, his nephews. I mean, he should be here today. You're
here today because you're taking action. You started the Don Cornelius Foundation, and I understand, Tony, that the person who actually gave you the idea was Mr. Stevie Wonder, who, by the way, I talked to, shared his own personal story, his anecdotes about your father when he died, and I just want to play part of that interview.
It's a heartbreak to know that he's gone at 75. What do you do? I mean, you hear about these things, and your heart aches, and you wish that you could have been there for that person. And for those in the past that have lost their lives in that kind of way. But I mean, whatever way one loses their life, you wish were you able to prevent that from happening in some kind of way, to encourage them, to inspire them. We just have to give them as much love as we can and let them know that, listen, no problem is so big that it cannot be solved.
Do you agree with that, Tony? And tell me more about this foundation you've started.
Yes, I totally agree with that, and thank God for Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder was one of the first people that I spoke to after my father's death, and he gave me words that I'll never forget, and those words were that life is worth living. And from that, the Don Cornelius Foundation was started. It's basically to help people transition, help people who are in need It's actually, life is beautiful, precious, and worth living. And that's what Stevie Wonder did for me. Unlike others who would either, close up, I kind of attacked it. I wanted to really do something about it. And that's where we are today.
I love how you say, thank God for Stevie Wonder. Having people like that in your life to then help you forward. And as part of this foundation, Tony, I understand you're focusing really on minorities specifically. You say when this happens, this being suicide, happens to a loved one, they don't talk about it, at least not with a professional. Why is that?
Well, it's a veil of shame, and if you will, I'll say that it's not just minorities. It's all people. We're all, as I say, we're all a starfish, and every starfish is worth saving. And I feel that as I express in the PSA that it's prescription drugs, it's old age, it's health, it's divorce, there's all kinds of things that draw us to hopelessness and pain. And that's who I want to reach out to. I want to make sure that people have a place to go, have someone to talk to.
So you never know, Tony Cornelius, who's watching right now. Could be people who are seeing similar signs in their own loved ones. Just finally, advice for them. What do they do? Well,
first of all, you get to a organization, Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is part of the American Foundation of Suicide, and that phone number is 1-800-273-TALK. There are people there 24 hours a day who can talk to you and let you know that it's okay. Your problems can be solved. You have someone to speak to, and that's what the Don Cornelius Foundation is really about, is awareness. It's letting people know that there's somebody you can talk to. Had I had the opportunity to save my father, believe me, I would, but it was too late. He had thoughts in his head that of hopelessness and those things sometimes, without expressing those, being able to express that to someone can be devastating.
Tony Cornelius, thank you for talking about this and coming on. Again, the phone number 1-800-273-TALK. Your foundation, Don Cornelius Foundation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Brooke.